Mr. Atheist. Woo! Mr. Atheist is on with us tonight, folks. How you doing, Mr. Atheist?
No, I'm just kidding. You can hear me fine.
You asshole. That's not going to work with the podcast listeners. They're not going to get that joke, but okay.
I started talking and my mouth was moving. How am I doing? Overall, fine. I have diarrhea. That's a true fact about me right now at this current state and time. But we did do a pre-show excavation in the hopes that would reduce the odds of my needing to temporarily exit, but we'll see. Drinking some water.
So there's Jimmy giving us that explicit tag that this show deserves right there. So we're going to try to make it work anyway. We've just found out this information 30 minutes ago, but the show must go on.
I mean, it's pretty much, you're better off betting I have diarrhea than I don't. Anytime I'm scheduled for anything.
I'll take that under consideration next time we try to get you on as a guest host. How about that? So yeah, this is Mr. Atheist, guys. In case you've been living under a rock, Mr. Atheist has been just shooting up at a spectacular rate in popularity. He creates content on YouTube, a lot of response videos talking about atheism and theism, talking about ideas in kind of social justice and stuff. I mean, he covers the whole just panoply of topics, and I'm super excited to have him on as a guest. I've been wanting to have him on for a long time, and now he's here with me. And yeah, it's going to be a great show, guys. Just remember, this is a call-in show. We have the number on screen if you're watching live. So if you want to talk to me or Mr. Atheist right now, you can do that. Go ahead and call the number on screen and get a hold of us, because we'd love to talk to you. Yeah, so what have you been up to, man?
If I can inject something too before the comments come rolling in, because this is a different audience, I will have you know, this is not a man bun. This is a rant bun. Get it right. Ooh. There's actually no such thing as a man bun, but there is such thing as a rant bun. And you will see that, I'm positive, later in the show. Did you ask me how I'm doing? Yeah, what am I doing?
How you doing? What are you doing? What have you been up to? You know, like how's life? You know,
I'm good. Good. Okay. Just launched a new channel also called Jimmy Snow. What do you know? That isn't exclusively atheist stuff, though. This week I did talk about, because I had some Jehovah's Witnesses at my door. I did go on there and talk about that. But anyway, I launched that this week. Other upcoming topics will be Golden Crisp versus Honey Smacks. I mean, based on my set, you can probably guess which one.
Wow. That's
which one I prefer.
That's, yeah, you got the stuff, man. I can place bets right now, I suppose. Man, okay, so you have like just a billion amount of videos out there. I mean, I don't know what your upload rate is. It's probably like 100 videos a day at least. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, what is Mr. Atheism, or just even your other channels? Like what is it that you do on YouTube? How do you describe yourself and your relationship to your content?
So the motivating factor for my content has changed, basically. I started off just with like you know what, I'm an atheist. I hear these questions all the time. I would like to answer them in just one spot. And now when people ask me these questions, like, why do I hate God or something of that nature, I can just send them to my channel. However, my channel is now focused more on something from my past, which is sort of indoctrination in the way that ideas get into people's brains and the way that they are programmed to live via these ideas. And so behavioral control, cult programming, and that kind of stuff is a lot of what I focus on. I come from Mormonism. I technically am still on the books as a Mormon. That probably won't be the case by the end of this year, because if they still haven't excommunicated me, I'll probably make some event, some fun event where I resign, maybe for hitting a certain charity dollar amount or something. I don't know. But yeah, I am an atheist, and I make content for people who, it's really targeted a lot toward people who are kind of on the fence or freshly out of atheism, and they have heard all of these things of like, this is what you as a woman or you as a man are supposed to be. This is what is true about trans people according to the Bible. Those kinds of people responding with a modern, more secular understanding of those issues, and creating a support community for people who face a lot of bigotry and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've obviously seen a lot of your content. And like, I think the recent popularity you've gotten is really deserved. You, like I said, cover just a wide range of topics. You approach it in kind of your own way. And I think is what's important is that you make these topics, I think, pretty approachable to people. You know, at first, when I first heard of you, I was like, what, he's called himself Mr. Atheist? Like, who the heck does he think he is?
Yeah.
You know, but it's like, oh, but you're I mean, as far as I know, I mean, you're a pretty humble guy, you know, like the way that you talk about your story and you talk about issues that are affecting your own life and how your own story affects the way that you view these larger, broader topics, I think is really wonderful. And I'm so glad that we have voices like you who are talking about your experiences and talking about like what all this means to you and like why this is so important to talk about in the first place.
And for the record, the reason why I went with the name Mr. Atheist, if you watch my episodes, which it's funny, Dan just said that he's seen a bunch of my episodes right before we came on. He said he's never watched an episode, but
that's not true. I did not say I never watched an episode. I said I haven't watched your stuff recently. You asshole! Come on, get it right.
Anyway, the reason if most episodes of Dear Mr. Atheist, I will introduce the topic and then I will say. I'm Mr. Atheist, let's do this, which is a reversal of one of the person who inspired the name Mr. Atheist was Josh Feuerstein. If you're not familiar with him, he made this video years ago that was like, here's the 3 minutes of proof evolution isn't true. And it's 3 minutes of nonsense, but he begins the episode with, hey, Josh Feuerstein here. You know, the other day, an atheist came out to me and he told me I was stupid, idiotic, and moronic because I believed in God. And then he goes on and he goes on and then he goes, so let's do this. Dear Mr. Atheist, which is, so my show is I'm Mr. Atheist, or on the beginning of my show, I start every episode with I'm Mr. Atheist. Let's do this in reaction to his let's do this, Dear Mr. Atheist. And my show is called Dear Mr. Atheist. And when I realized he had gone out there and said, Dear Mr. Atheist, and no one had picked up the Mr. Atheist mantle, that's literally the extent to why I picked Mr. Atheist as my name. I wouldn't call myself humble, as you've said, but I'm very open and I'm very inviting. And my channel, there's a great number of people on my channel with a broad range of beliefs. I know I know a lot of Christians, which I still don't quite understand, but I know a lot of Christians do watch. I know the LGBTQA plus community find some both safety and probably some catharsis from the channel. And I've got pagans and Wiccans, and I know I have ex-Muslim audience, but nobody has recently emailed me and said I'm an active Muslim and I watch. So that's the one that's missing, I guess, right now.
Well, okay. So when I say the word humble, what I mean is you have a sense of humility about yourself. Okay, like not all my guests are willing to admit that they have diarrhea on stream right before they go on, right? But I just like what I mean by that is, you know, you have a lot of people who talk about these issues in a very like professional sort of academic breakdown, and it's kind of condescending sometimes. It's kind of like, oh, you should have figured this out like years ago, man. You're really stupid. Like, why didn't you get this together sooner? And like, I don't think that your approach is really like that. You choose to like rapid fire talk about these topics in ways, in languages that I think I would be comfortable sending people who aren't as familiar with these kinds of topics could digest and stuff. And I think that's super, super important when we're talking about these things and getting people involved because, yeah, I mean, we can have these stuffy academic discussions all day, but if we're not having it in the broader scale, if we're not reaching the public with all this kind of stuff, then, you know, what's the point? It doesn't really matter, you know? And
that's why I like a lot of new atheist content, because a lot of old atheist YouTube, with a couple of exceptions, but a lot of old atheist YouTube and what people associated with atheist YouTube was frankly bigotry. Like, I mean, there's just a lot of bigoted atheist content out there, very, very closed off to trans communities, people who might call themselves feminist, but also very, very angry and kind of something you're not going to find on my channel is me responding like, oh my God, how can you be such an idiot and that sort of thing? Because the way I phrase it all the time is there, but for the grace of circumstance, go I. It's based on the religious phrase, the religious saying, there, but for the grace of God, go I. And the reason I say that is I grew up very religious. I used to say very racist, very homophobic, very bigoted things. And thankfully, due to circumstance, I was able to see through it and change. But I know people from my old Mormon days who are smarter than me, who even have skeptical brains that for some reason just shut off when it comes to their Mormonism, and who didn't find their way out. So any person that sometimes, I mean, I've reviewed quite a bit of Girl Defined. Sometimes I get impatient with how disgusting the message is, but always, I think my first reflex when I see a person who just says terrible, disgusting things that you shouldn't say is usually pity. I usually pity that person for being in a place in their life where they feel confident espousing such disgusting things.
Jimmy, I heard you talk about, sometimes the community can respond to things in anger, and sometimes I think that kind of turns people off. Would you consider yourself an angry guy? Do you consider yourself like an angry YouTuber?
I get angry, but no, I'm not an angry YouTuber. Again, it's
okay.
Yeah, I would say I am more patient than a lot of the people, and I'm not trying to like brag about here are my good qualities.
Sure.
I'm more patient than a lot of the people that when it comes to talking to somebody who has views that are conflicting with mine, but that patience does have a limit, and outright bigotry and calling for things like that pastor who we won't name on the show, who came to my channel to call me because I am pansexual. I won't drop the word on here, but it's a word that begins with F, and has called for the deaths of gay people. Yeah, those people I'm not going to be as patient with. But angry, no, I'm just not that angry of a guy, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, I struggle with that thing. It's like, what do we draw the hard limits on, and like what can we have patience for? What's our limit of tolerance and stuff? I think a lot of people kind of talk about this idea of like the paradox of tolerance, like can we allow, and to what extent, and how much should our society tolerate these things and these ideas and stuff. And to be honest, I don't have all the answers to it. I try to be like you. I think I try to be as patient as I can with the people who call into the show and the people I talk to in real life. But sometimes you just feel like you need to let the foot down. And it pains me to do it. I don't actually get enjoyment out of it. I know some people do, and they like to be the people that tear it down, but it's hard for me to do that to people, because it's like, oh, you've pushed me to this limit, to this place where I don't want to go, and I never feel good after the situation,
The ways that one of the things I try to live by and would suggest to others try to as well. And I've seen some of your stuff, and I think I know what you're referring to. It seems to me there is a difference between you are reacting angrily because you're bothered versus you are reacting angrily in defense of people or of somebody else. So it's kind of like, how selfish is your reaction and your response? And so with, I mean, again, if people are going to come at the LGBTQA+ community with just some, can I say douchey on the show?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay, with some douchey assertions.
Yeah.
Then yes, I'm going to bite back, because at that point you have to at some points defend people, but at other times you have to vehemently fight against bad ideas, and sort of like, you don't want to present equality of ideas either. There is no, like, if somebody's coming at you with just straight up racist stuff, I'm not going to do the like, listen, I understand that that's your opinion and we all believe things a certain way, and we all believe, no, it's going to be, listen, you racist asshole. And I might still try and lay out why their reasoning is wrong, and usually I will, but I'm not going to present it as though our ideas are equal if yours are like genocide and mine is like humanism.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good boundary to have. I mean, I don't know, because I haven't been tested to that limit yet. I don't know how I would respond in the situation. I would think that I would react to the same way if I heard something specifically about like race and stuff on the show, which hasn't happened yet. But yeah, it's one of those things, like you said, where it's like, you got to stand for something, and I try to be as open as I can on the show. I do admit I'm an atheist. I do admit that I do come with these certain beliefs, but I'm open to being changed, and I'm open to having conversations about stuff and having my mind changed on certain things. And being the secular humanist I am, it kind of tells me like, well, I don't want to accept anything based on, you know, dogma or just some sort of unknown authority. I do want to have conversations about even kind of taboo stuff. But yeah, there does come a point where it's like, well, we're also talking about marginalized communities and stuff. And at that point, it's like, you got to go into the defensive mode sometimes. So let's talk about like your history just a little bit. Like, your history as a Mormon and how that kind of affected the channel now. I mean, like, do you think that area of your life, you know, growing up in a religious household and stuff, does that inform a lot of your views now? Does that inform kind of how you run the channel and stuff, as opposed to somebody else who may have not had kind of those experiences?
Yeah, there's one thing that I've, we talk about on my channel from time to time, sort of like privileged states. And one of the states that I actually want to talk about too is like, there is a privileged state of having never been on the wrong side of anything. And I find that a lot of those people who have, quote unquote, never been on the wrong side of any major issue can often be extremely intolerant and non-empathetic to people who have been, or who presently are on the wrong side of an issue. And so I don't see, because I genuinely was almost a caricature of what a piece of garbage you can be in my past. And because maybe I need it for my own self, the concept of that I'm not irredeemable for those things from my past, I feel that way about people in general. So while I wouldn't say my upbringing with faith and like, I definitely don't behave myself, the way I behave myself would not have much to do with my Mormonism. However, the fact that I was so wrong about so many things, I think, is why I have a little bit more empathy, compassion, and pity for, because it's really about just pitying my past self. It is knowing you can change. You can be completely wrong about something. You can be totally narcissistic and selfish about just everything, and turn that around and change if you decide to, and you go after a different set of values. And so that is what I try to be understanding, but again, with that line of, I'm not going to tolerate that which is intolerable, but have as much understanding far beyond the boundaries of a lot of people. And I know it makes a lot of people upset with me. It does. I get plenty of comments of like, why would you talk with this person? Why would you engage with this person? People lost their minds when I said that I like Paul and Morgan as people. I can't stand their ideas, but I know I could hang out with them for an afternoon and enjoy their company and them enjoy mine. Part of that comes also from, I am not a person that, I mean, they do want to marginalize the queer community of which I am a part, but I pass straight, and there's obviously a lot about me that they would be very comfortable around. So that there is, to some degree, that I have that advantage, and I'm not saying everyone should do that, especially if you are the kind of people they would hope to marginalize even more. But that is why I have that approach, and it was, having been so wrong makes me hold people to not as high a standard of how right you must be.
What a great way. That's a great way to phrase it. You know, I think the same way of my own past experiences, specifically as a Christian, and some other ideas I picked up along the way, like just where I was at and how I was as a person. I mean, as you know, my story, I talked to Anthony Magnabosco as part of that journey, and that's the most public part of my story, I think. But, you know, like when I talked with Anthony didn't treat me like I was some crazy person or that I was just completely wrong about everything I've ever been in my entire life. You know, he treated me like a human being, and I really appreciated that. And that was a totally different thing, especially from what I conceived about atheists in particular, about how the atheist community kind of approaches a lot of these topics with, like, ironically, with a lot of fire and brimstone sometimes.
And your exposure, I'm guessing, to atheism before was probably YouTube atheism, which used to look very angry, very dismissive. It's
very different from the scene that we have going on right now, which, by the way, Jimmy is going to try to make it to Faithless Forum. And as well of you guys who watch this show know, I will also be at Faithless Forum. So if you want to try to talk to us and other YouTube atheists and stuff, you should definitely check that out on April 27th. That's going to be really cool. And
I should clarify. I just did this when you said that. I was only saying the okay sign. I know that I just have the hardest time stop using this now that it's like a racist thing.
You know what? I thought about the same thing. I used to do this. It's like I used to do it as a habit all the time. It's such a bad habit for me now. And if you look back at my shows, I've probably done it like without even thinking about it before. It's one of those things. No, I'm not going to crucify you. So hopefully nobody else.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I promise. This only means okay. If you watch my show and you think I might secretly be a white supremacist. Yeah,
then you haven't been paying close enough attention. I think.
White supremacists do not like me.
That's right. I imagine, I haven't talked to a lot of white supremacists, but if they knew what I was about, they probably wouldn't like me either. So let's do some announcement here. And Jimmy, are you ready to take some calls?
Let's take some calls.
Okay, cool. Well, before we take the calls, like I said, I have just some quick announcements here. As always, you can check out the Atheist Community of Austin newsletter that's coming out this month. We still have the March edition out there. You can check that out. There's going to be a link in the description. We can see that on screen as well. I think you can view an online edition of that too. So definitely check that out. If you want to see the AXP guys and Talk Heathen guys together at the same place at the same time, definitely check out the American Atheist Convention that's coming up in April 19th to the 21st, 22nd, that weekend. They're going to be doing some shows together on that Saturday, I believe, so definitely look into that. Also, this Sunday, if you tune into Atheist Experience, then we're going to be showing some footage from Atheist Day, which just happened last Saturday, which I was a part of too, which was really, really cool. So definitely look forward to seeing footage of that. I'm about ready to take some calls, man. Let's go ahead and dive into this thing. You ready?
Can I do one shout out for Atheist Day and just say thank you to Nikki, who wore my merch to Atheist Day, and that was just cool. People were sending me pictures all day like, hey, look at this girl at Atheist Day. I was like, I know that girl. Anyway.
That's
so
awesome.
That was cool. That was cool. Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, for sure. I also want to give a quick shout out because I've been getting a lot of people ask me questions like, oh, who does the thumbnail art? Am I doing this? No, I don't do the thumbnail art. That's a friend of mine. That's Jenna Hoover, who goes on Instagram as Prince Ep-Ed. That's the word Prince and then EP and then ED. She does all of our art for the show. She's really cool. Yeah, definitely check out that thumbnail right there. It's beautiful. She's a really talented artist. So I'll tell that story about how she became the artist for the show one day. It's an interesting story. I've known her since high school, and how we kind of met back again is kind of a funny tale, but we'll save that for another day. For now, I think we should go ahead and get into some calls. Let's do it here. So while the thumbnail is going to change off the screen here, I'm going to go ahead and start with our first call.